Thank you, everyone, for coming to Managing the Risk of Contacting Strangers. We've all been told by your parents not to talk to strangers. I don't know, I'm just making that one up, and my parents never told me that. But is it safe to send to strangers? Well, hopefully that's what we're going to respond this webinar. Thank you so much to Radek for joining us today. How are you doing?
Pleasure. I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Awesome. So Radek and I actually filled this slide together, and then we put a few things that we think that you're going to learn if you stick around. I think the two first points are mine, which is basically you're going to visually see the impact of your bounces on deliverability, and you're going to see there is absolutely a very strong correlation. So that's very interesting to watch. And also the impact of different email providers. Contacting different email providers will not give you the same chance of bouncing or not. That's for
Mhm.
me. What do you want to teach today, Radek?
Yeah, you're gonna be very geeky, I guess, with a lot of data,
Nice.
and I'm gonna be a little bit more, let's say, historical, philosophical, in some sense. But I'm gonna get to some nitty-gritty stuff as well, and some tips. I hope actionable, and I hope valuable. But if at some point you guys feel there's too much, let's say, vague narrative, just let me know and I'll just skip.
Yeah, I think you'll be fine. Don't worry. We're between friends here. Quick presentation. Why should you listen to me? You may not know me, and some people may not know Redec, depending where you're coming from or what group and audience you're coming from. I'm the founder of QuickMail.io. Oh, it used to be QuickMail.io. We named it to .com, but I've been saying it like so many times that now I keep saying it. Anyway, QuickMail.com. I'm the founder. I've been doing it since 2014, so 11 years. Absolutely love the space. It's been very challenging, never really stopped. I did a book in 2015, and even for a lot of things are still valid when it comes to strategy. There's a lot of tactics that change, and the floor's been raised every year. Every year you have like a new things to handle. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game. You do one step, then Google penalize you, then you do something else to go around it. Then there is Microsoft coming in. So it's a fun game. It's definitely not a boring space, and obviously makes things difficult to follow basically. And that's why we got a podcast episode 400 now. So it's been like doing like 8 years. I have a podcast with Jack Reamer, a very good friend of mine, and I'm running the software side and he's running an agency. So we kind of like combine both of our views on cold outreach, and it's very interesting at least for me. And that's why I do the podcast. And I've been doing also a couple of Udemy course, and sometimes they send me like $2 or so. So it's like, it's really nice. Anyway, what a scam, Udemy. Quick words on QuickMail. What is it? Or at least what's our mission? Our mission is really to help small and medium businesses to sell more. And the way we're doing it is with outreach, primarily through email and LinkedIn automation. So if you like email automation or LinkedIn automation, you may want to give us a go. We are really the best one when it comes to email automation. When it comes to LinkedIn, we're still catching up. It's still very the beginning, but you can still do a lot of things with LinkedIn. And when you combine both, I think you get like a lot more chances and no bounces on LinkedIn. So something worth exploring. How we're different, there's a few points. We have superior deliverability. That's what I mentioned. Like our whole expertise been on email. That's why I'm super pumped to have Radek today talking about like bounce, because it's really a big part of deliverability. We also have like really advanced stats that gives you actionable insight into what to do when you're having problem with deliverability. And we are really good for agency to manage multiple workspace. We were one of the first one to introduce the management of multiple workspace. And so you can do a lot of things at bulk. And yeah, we also added LinkedIn Unlimited since this year. So if you want to give it a go with LinkedIn, you're more than welcome. But anyway, that was me. Up to you, Redek.
Yeah, so I don't have that kind of stories about podcasts or
You're
writing
just too
books.
humble. You're just too humble, man. I know you for
No,
some
I
time.
don't. I don't. But yeah, I was born in 1983 in a small village in the mountains on the southwest of Poland, close to German and Czech border. And like since the beginnings, I wanted to be like let's say, a as good as possible human being. Later on, I just moved to a big city in Poland, started work at corporates, moved to US for a couple of years, working for the corporate, and at some point
I
it
didn't know that. Where?
Yeah. It
You're
was
in
it was
US.
fun. It was great experience. It actually and that was part of my plan. I wanted to get as much experience, in a wise organization with great values than to start my own. And suddenly, the opportunity came. So I moved back to Poland to start Bouncer in um, in 2017. Probably if I knew what I know right now, I wouldn't start it. And yet I'm
It's always the case, right? Once you know all the problems and all the crap we are going through at some point, it's just like, why did I do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. In meantime, I also became a father, and this is right now a center of my universe, my baby girl. But of course, trying to combine both being a father and being an entrepreneur, so-called art entrepreneur. If it comes to Bouncer, so when we started it, and it's still valid. Like it may sound vague, but essentially our mission was always like to help people get and stay connected uh, first in email. Like there's a reason why in our name or branding there's no like email because we also think that at some point we might go into different channels, but we started with in email because this is a powerful channel and it has a lot of challenges.
Good
So
move. Now we are doing LinkedIn, but we are called QuickMail. So annoying, but anyway.
yeah, well, you can probably live with that. Like in Poland, we've got the company that is right now creating Windows, and their name is like Wirex or something because they started with wires. Anyways,
Funny.
branding mistakes. Um, yeah, we provide like super powerful yet easy to use email verification platform. And we actually wanted to be API only, like in the early days. We wanted to actually provide our engine to folks like you, Jeremy. And so that actually like end users doesn't have to care about email verification. They get it inside the tool that they work in. So that's the well, and this is in our DNA. Like the engine is there. This is one of the most sophisticated engines on the market. I try to be humble, but at the same time, I'm super proud of what team created. We've got the best coverage on the market. We've got also like deep verification of catch-all email addresses, toxicity check, plus like super easy to use web application that also has something unique like bounce estimate that can guide you when making the decisions. And we probably will talk a bit more about that later on. I don't want to like oversell. So of course there's a plenty of tools like ours, but what I do want to sell essentially is that email verification solutions are handy things in order to mitigate the risks. So that's probably going to be my part here.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I'm not sure if you check my slides, but I'm actually
I did.
just
Yeah.
pulling off the data from Bouncer from QuickMail. So stay tuned, and I'll let you know if everything he said should be listened to or not at all. Anyway, so let's talk quickly about what I did. So, like Radek say, I'm a bit of a geek, and I like to look at data. We're not super strong in marketing, but we're super strong in engineering, and so that's why we have the best stats in the world. But at the same time, what we do is I like in all those webinars to just grab some stats, and so actually, if anyone in the chat could actually say, if they know on the top of their head, how much bounce rate they have, I think I'd be very curious to see that. So if you can just type it into your chat and you know the number for across all the accounts in QuickMail, so like hundreds and hundreds of accounts, boom. That is 90, the last 90 days, it is 3.19%. And to me, it's amazing. 0.5, Josh, way to go. Vanessa, 0.34, that's awesome. Those are really great numbers. In the past, I mean, I started 11 years ago, so I've seen the evolution. My first campaign had like 9%, and it was totally fine. We had people with like 40%, 30%, 20%. It's like all those things were like normal at the time. And over time, I think what happened is like the data normalized a little bit. So it wasn't like random name in inboxes. And the tech stack was a little bit more, Well, I'm sure Radek has some ideas as well of how the technical actually evolve and change, and he's probably going to cover that. But it's interesting to know that like these days, like across everything, it's just 3.19%. And I think that's really admirable. Meaning like if you're sending like 100 emails, only 3 will bounce. And the other thing that is interesting is like bounces are not necessarily just email address that doesn't exist. There are multiple bounces. I think I'm going to go a few through that in the rest of the presentation, but you have what we call sender bounces, which is if you're using Outlook, for example, Outlook will just bounce your email before even sending it if they don't like it. And that was kind of like new. That happened pretty much last year, and it was like a catastrophe for a lot of people. We got stuff around this, but it's interesting to figure out like, even though that's one big number, it may encompass a lot of difficulties. So 3.19, pretty pumped about that personally. I was expecting way bigger. The other interesting thing is like it varies. It's actually not always the same number because obviously it varies on the quality of the lists that are brought to QuickMail, the quality of the verification that is done. We do have what we call light bounce verification, which will basically prevent people to contact email addresses that don't exist or who don't have an email provider. And that happens. So maybe you put, I don't know, like Jeremy at superquickmail.com, and superquickmail.com doesn't exist anymore. Or the email address is not working anymore. So all those things are very important. 1.76, Gerard, good one. Also a good number. So it varies. I think the peak here is about like 4.8%. So it does varies depending on how much people actually upload stuff. But over the years, really big progress. So my first question when I was preparing this this talk with Radek was like, what is the actual relationship between bounces and replies? Like, is there really a correlation, or is it like just you can send as much as you want. It doesn't matter anyway. You're still going to get replies. So this is what I actually extracted. And that's only for the campaigns from the beginning of this year, because obviously we got 11 years of data. We're not going to combine thing in the past that has no meaning whatsoever with now. So that's only the last 6 months. And there's a very clear correlation. You can see on the y-axis is the actual reply rate. So yes, from the beginning of the year, we have some campaign that do 80% reply rate, 60% reply rate, and as you're going, then you got more and more campaigns. But what's interesting is on the x-axis, you got the bounce rate, and you can see that people with like obviously 100% bounces, obviously very very not getting you a lot of replies, but as you're going down, then you can see that it's very hard to get like a bad list or a list that bounces with also replies. And of course, you could still get replies, but like you always got like in every data, you always got like 1 or 2 data points that are like WTF, like what are they here? Like this guy's got like 30% reply rate and 70% reply rate and then 30% bounce rate. Like that's crazy. But that happens. It's very rare when it does. And so me being curious, I go ahead and check the campaigns. Also, those ones are a bit curious. This one's also curious. But you could see basically if you're looking that it's basically below than 5% is your chances to get good reply rate. Everything above and very quickly, that's a massive cliff. Everything, and it needs to be sort of an exception in order to be able to get replies. Cool. Then my next question, when I looked at the stats, is like, oh yeah, do all provider bounce the same way? As in, if I'm sending an email to Gmail, will I have more chances to bounce than if I'm sending an email to Outlook, for example? And maybe it play a role, maybe it doesn't. But that's kind of that was kind of interesting to me. This is my account. How it looks like in terms of provider split. So we have a widget in QuickMail that shows you in real time what's the distribution of your account. They don't all look the same, and it's very interesting. Sometimes, most of your leads are on Gmail. In my case, most of my leads are on Gmail and Outlook. If you look at those two, it's like 90% of my leads are on this. And it's crazy to me because there's a lot of leads that are opt-in as well that I have inside. So it's very interesting to me and probably reflective to the tech industry that I'm going after. But sometimes I look at other accounts and it's like a completely different distribution. And so that's very important to figure out like who are you targeting, because who you're targeting will determine how much risk you're taking by, sending them emails. And I'm sure, some of the names will probably be like Proofpoint or Mimecast will be probably like common to Radek, but some of them are like very obscure. You have like things I never heard of. It's probably like, personal infrastructure of some guy with his MacBook in his room, just like having like a mail server. It's very awkward. But the point I'm trying to make here is like your distribution will be different. And so you need to pay attention to that when you're contacting your providers. So I looked at the bounce rate of people contacting Gmail addresses, and it's kind of like more or less stable. There's like a little bit of a bump here, first week of May, but nothing really too worrisome. And it doesn't have like a wild modification. So that's pretty much like what you could expect. If you're contacting Gmail, you're gonna get between 2 and 3% chances of getting a bounce. Outlook is slightly higher, but it changed a little bit. You see it's like lower here, but then it's just like jumping up and then getting here. But when I looked at the inside of this, it was because Gmail contacting Outlook was causing problem in that case. I don't know if Outlook, created some filters and so on, because again, I said like a bounce is not necessarily that an email doesn't exist. Sometimes it's because you're bouncing because of spam content, or you're bouncing because of your domain reputation, because you're blacklisted. Those sort of things do matter. And so this is a distribution, and I'm kind of like disappointed because basically what this represents is like all the bounces on QuickMail that happens and on what provider they happened. So 22.2% of all the bounces in QuickMail the last 6 months were on Gmail, right? So it's like, a fourth of it. 25%, another fourth of it was like on Outlook. But you could see like I put like Yahoo, it's 5%, Proofpoint, whatever. But then the rest of it is like 41% is other. And that's exactly what I was mentioning, which is like less known infrastructure, not even worth for us to even list them as providers. And that to me is absolutely crazy. Does that surprise you, Radek, to see that?
No.
Okay.
No.
It did. It just surprised me.
Well, I would say that maybe there would be a little bit smaller piece for the other providers, but indeed, especially in the let's say in B2B
Yes, that's the one.
targets, there are like custom setups, sometimes utilizing the engines of the big folks,
That's right.
but anyways, kind of seen as the other provider. So yeah. So it essentially depends. It kind of also represents the your community. Like this is the your community is not like sending
Of course,
to
it's called
like
emails.
homogeneous.
Of course, we're called
Yeah.
email. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Okay, so this is a quick slide preventing bounces beyond email verification. So as we're trying to minimize bounces, there's a few things that we do and you can do as well. But the main thing is that in QuickMail we provide what we call a light debounce. This is by no means a replacement for email verification. That's what I mentioned. You won't contact someone who doesn't have an email provider in their domain name. The second thing is we also monitor daily blacklists, because that's actually a big thing. It's like if you're being blacklisted, you may actually bounce, but you're bouncing because your sender reputation is bad, not because the email provider is wrong. Meaning Radek services could tell you like, yeah, you're not going to bounce, but you're still bouncing. Why? Because the sender that you've been using is actually blacklisted, and the other one reading the blacklist will say like, oh, it's in this blacklist, I'm not going to relay his message. That's also why cold emailers actually always use a different domains, because it's like a seatbelt. When you are in a crash, meaning like you end up in a blacklist, you don't want your main domain to be part of it. You just want it, on different domains. Was pretty pleased. Only 0.34% of whole domains on QuickMails are blacklisted, which is pretty low compared to some of the aggressive nature of some of cold outreach that is being done on the platform. And at the same time, blacklists usually last a month from my experience. So there will be maximum like a month after 30 days. There's just so many domains to take care of that they don't actually last more than 30 days. It also gives a chance for people who are hacked by a malicious hacker to just not burn the domain completely forever. Like I mentioned, there's different types of bounces. You have the server bounce. It will depend on the variable time that if you're sending like too much too fast with Outlook, for example, but also with Gmail or whatever, like you're going to be blacklisted or you're going to end up in spam. You may not necessarily bounce, but you're definitely going to end up in spam. And sometimes you will be bounced because of the sender. They will say like, oh, looks like you're a bulk sender, or maybe you've been hacked by a virus. We're going to stop, your sender. And that will generate a lot of bounce for every email you try to send. And the second thing is varying content. Last year, we had Outlook being super aggressive with their bulk sender policy. And so every time someone was sending an email, it was bouncing back, but like without even leaving the Outlook ecosystem, just because Outlook figured out like, hey, this is a bulk sender, we're going to not do that. In QuickMail, we added then the feature called Reword with AI. It's a tick box, you tick it, and all your emails sending are unique, and that actually solved the problem. So now, the filter of Outlook is a bit dumb. It's just like, oh, all your emails are different. You're probably not a spammer anymore. So that's good. Anyway, and obviously the spam content. So the content of your email may be considered as spam and then be bouncing simply because of that. Just try to send Viagra in an email, for example, to even to your friends. Actually, it's gonna bounce back in your face. But you can check with a tool like called spamtester.ai just for knowing if you're good to send, if you're good to go, and then you can take full advantage of the email verification results that you're gonna get. There's nothing worse to get like good email validity and then just bounce because the rest of the setup is badly done. In summary, a very quick summary from me, bounces strongly correlate with deliverability. That's something like, very, very strong that we've seen on the graph. Always verify your list and stay below 5%. So all our listeners, good job there. It's not static, it fluctuates, so stay on top of it. Like I do remember like a few clients, we had absolutely no problem, but then they changed their lead source. And suddenly, they blow up in terms of bounces. So you have to be careful with that. Like it does fluctuate. Look at all the type of bounce. So if something bounces, just do read what it says. Why does it bounce? Like, is it spam, suspected of spam? Is it because the person doesn't exist? Is it because you can't send with your sender? So do look at that. Sender reputation do matters. If you have a bad one, you're going to end up in a blacklist, and vice versa. If you're on a blacklist, then it burns your sender reputation. So you should not send more emails when you're in a blacklist. And I would also say that in all those years, the data has improved, and I think Radek is a great agent in the space because before it was really hard to guess people's email address, but I think there's a lot of standardization that happens these days. So it's going to be like first name dot last name at, or it's going to be just first name, or it's going to be first letter of first name and then last name. And it's just like, it's pretty much everything you find. Everything else is really becoming exotic these days. And most people have aliases anyway. And the last point, actually, just before we, so is it worth to listen to Radek? I've been looking at all the accounts across QuickMail that were using Bouncer in QuickMail, because we have like a native integration where you can put your Bouncer key and then we'll automatically use Bouncer. And I figured out like, what's their aggregated like bounce, and it was like almost like 1%. I'm like, okay, those guys are good. So we may even promote even more Bouncer now. I looked at the stats. So thanks, Radek, for all your work here. It's definitely providing good numbers.
Sweet, thank you. Guess I'm gonna like share my screen so that.
Oh yeah.
I need to send you a request.
Here we go. I'm gonna stop sharing.
All right. Yeah. So share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen right now.
Yeah, I can see it.
Awesome. So,
and if you guys, sorry, and if you guys have any questions, do not hesitate to put them. I'll just compile them, and then we'll get them all at the end.
Awesome. Yeah. So kind of answering the question is contacting strangers a safe thing, right? So essentially, like historically, if it comes to like history of sales, contacting strangers always have been difficult, and it was also always kind of risky. In the old days, let's say sales traveling salesman, well, essentially like businesses could go to like a safe place, to the marketplace, where they would have their small shop or whatever, and sell and kind of go for the inbound strategies. But it was crowded, and those that haven't had like resources and assets, a lot of assets, usually didn't have a really good spot, really didn't have a really good exposure. So there have been folks that actually wanted to go out and like not be directly compared at the marketplace and travel to see their customers, but there were risks and also the resources that were needed. That's why, for example, in computer science, there's this typical algorithm or problem, algorithmic problem of traveling salesmen and trying to optimize their route. But they had also risks of jumping into someone else's territory and getting banned from the community that they visited. So it was always difficult, but and it was always about managing the potential value that my customers can get out of me and that I can get out of them, kind of in the exchange of goods, versus the risks I'm taking and the resources that I need to use in order to get to those people. And fast forward from the old traveling salesman to the email outreach, like you probably know it much better. But 10 years ago, the email outreach was much simpler than it is right now. It was much easier.
Yeah.
Essentially, and it not necessarily was because everyone that we've been sending to really wanted to hear from us, right? We've been missing on prospecting sometimes, but essentially, there haven't been as many, let's say, challenges from the deliverability perspective back then because it was still novelty and not many folks have been doing it. The thing is that essentially, and while talking, because sometimes I do talk to like anti-spam influencers and some anti-spam geeks that manage the networks of spam traps or manage the anti-spam filters, and they essentially say that the challenge that they've got with, let's say, automated and sales enablement solutions and automated email outreach is that it it sometimes it is being abused by some folks, and like doing a spray and pray kind of activities. So they see it as a challenge because in the old days, actually salespeople were limited by resources, so it was difficult to scale. But email outreach, actually, this was the moment of, with cold calling, we were still limited by the resources, by the assets that we had, number of salespeople that were doing the call, the time that we had during the day for making the calls. But with the cold email, suddenly kind of our horizons broadened, and we had much more opportunities to get out, reach out to people on scale. And this scale kind of was causing some problems to the email service providers, to internet service providers, anti-spam filters, etc. So this kind of adoption of cold email during the last decade actually, first of all, created some saturation, and also, recipients being kind of sometimes frustrated of getting too many unrelevant, emails in their inboxes. But also anti-spam filters identifying that kind of traffic, kind of correlating or the traffic that email outreach, legit email outreach, the patterns that there are sometimes are similar to the patterns that like fishers do, or so that was kind of causing the problems for the email anti-spam filters to identify which is legit and which is not, because there are some similarities in terms of like traffic, in terms of quality of the data, etc. That kind of saturation led to enhancements of anti-spam filters, kind of affecting us as let's say small businesses trying to spread out the word to the world that we are there with something awesome that we've got to offer. And it is like I'll pause here about the anti-spam filters. Like the story of anti-spam filters is interesting. It actually is like it's like decades, like probably 3 decades at least, of anti-spam filters. First, because spam was essentially just at the very beginning of email as a channel, probably like less than a couple of months after first email being sent, there was a first spam being sent to all the actually people in the network having the emails. So the anti-spam filters have started to evolve, but first they were like super simple. For example, just looking at the words, spam words. At some point, fishers try to get around it, and they were sending picture with the content, but it was just pictures. So anti-spam filters couldn't identify the words to identify that actually this, that kind of, let's say, amount of words that usually are correlated to the spam message is in the message. So that's why anti-spam filters also try to identify how big actually a portion of the email is an imaginary versus the content. So that kind of ratio started to be, and it's been like, in the background, the kind of battles between the anti-spam filters and, criminals, cyber criminals, phishers, spammers with mentioned Viagra or Nigerian King, um, it's still happening in the background. And actually, like probably what we get in our inboxes as consumers of emails is maybe less than 2% of what actually was tried to be sent. The rest is being bounced. There's such a ton of emails actually flying around over the network that are being identified by spam filters. So we as a consumers of email are protected by spam filters, but at the same time, it creates some challenges to us as, let's say, folks trying to reach out to potential customers. Another thing was that actually the bounce rate. So it since very early beginnings, as I reckon, it was a very important factor because there was a correlation between the spam, meaning between the bounces and spam messages, because some of the cyber criminals, they have been guessing like emails, or sending emails to very old gathered email address lists, and that's why kind of anti-spam filters started to identify the ratio between the bounce back ratio, and this is actually something that influences the deliverability for sure. Then there were block lists to just track of bad senders, spam traps. They're still existent, and they're interestingly being sometimes put. I do know one anti-spam influencer that he's a great geek actually, and sometimes he plans his spam traps because he's managing the network of spam traps. He plans his spam traps in places that like a normal human being would never find those email addresses, right? But like robots, crawlers, they do get that, and then he observes what's the propagation of the spam trap. And like last year, he contacted me because we actually kind of hit this spam trap while doing the email verification, because one of
Oops.
our customers, actually in the cold email space, did target this email address, and this particular cold mailer actually acquired this email address from very known and with a good reputation data provider. So it was interesting, even though many, really good data providers, they make sure that they don't like get the data, their data from very, let's say not legitimate sources, where they don't scrape that much, but it did propagate. Essentially, they bought it from some additional data provider that bought it from another one that made the crawling. So that kind of propagation, and it took like 3 months since the spam trap was planted to the moment that first emails have been sent to it and first connections have been done. So that is interesting. Essentially, yeah, another thing is that some of the, let's say, hardcore anti-spam folks, they do consider cold email as the in some aspects spam because they, in their definition, this is unsolicited email, even though it's in a business relationship, so we're wearing different hats, but it is unsolicited. So there are some conversations in the anti-spam community to to look into and have a dialogue and have some discussion. I'm not sure if they're gonna invite, us or you, Jeremy,
They probably
to the
won't.
conversation. But I've been hearing that there have been some plans to have a dialogue and conversation about, kind of deciding whether the cold outreach should be considered as spam or not, and how should it be treated by the anti-spam filters, spam trap networks, and like email providers. So there's a, let's say, there's this aspect, and the main reason behind it is because there are some, as in any kind of community, there are some folks that actually like over abuse the channel, and are just making bad reputation for the rest of the community of the salespeople. But it's not like super uncommon. um of course, content was as I mentioned, this is something that is being analyzed by anti-spam filters, and at some point also engagement with the signals, like positive and negative signals, meaning there are there are some indications that, of course, like unsubscribes, this is negative, negative, let's say, signal of lack of engagement. This is not as worse and as marked as spam, because
Yeah,
that is painful. But so it's much better to give the ability to unsubscribe than to be marked as as spam. Our message is being marked as spam, but also positive engagement, meaning the big folks like Google, Microsoft, but also the smaller ones with the sophisticated tech, they do know what their users are, how they are interacting with the emails that they get, right? They know that someone was reading it longer, or scrolling, or clicking, etc. So they are able to measure the engagement of their user base, and sometimes actually they defer sending delivering a particular message of particular campaign to all the recipients. Sometimes they deliver it like immediately to
exactly.
some portion of the recipients, just to see how it resonates, and then based on that make decision whether this should be delivered to the main inbox or to the spam folder, or completely like blocked, or to promotions, etc. So there's, with a ton of emails being received by Gmail, they do have capabilities to do that. So the engagement is also very important. Okay, so we know that spray and pray is kind of over, right? And we are hearing in the industry that this is not the best practice. There are some folks that are capable right now on doing the high volumes, but there's actually, and there's some tools that are helping, to scale maybe higher than we would normally be able. Like there's a rise of warm-up solutions on the market. There's a rise of deliverability tools helping that, like auto infrastructure being set up. But kind of I see that as it's of course, this is those are interesting improvements, and they're valuable, and they're helping to be able to scale. But it seems like, and we do hear that, some email service providers will be also catching up on that. So this is interesting. And this is interesting, actually, like dynamics in the space. We've got right now like the access to the cheap AI, relatively cheap AI, like evolution or revolution,
Yeah,
whatever you call it.
reword is a good example of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you said, this is really cool thing. The question is, well, I'm saying that this is a cheap because it is still relatively cheap, but we'll see what the future will bring because, ChatGPT, OpenAI, they're not profitable. They essentially are losing money. They're burning a ton of money, even though they've got really decent revenues. But I believe that they plan to get a profitability in 2029. So we'll see if in some, at some moment, if they don't raise additional capital, they might need to like raise the prices. So and and right now they're and those big folks are there to like capture as much market penetration as possible, because they do have the capital from the big banks. But at some point, there's going to be a moment for monetization. So we'll see if the AI will be that cheap as it is right now. So we'll see how it brings. So we'll see if it's going to be sustainable, right? And whether this is going to and well, while we kind of and when we've got, I kind of have feel that in order to get the results and like safely with manageable risks to reach out to strangers, we need to kind of come back to the basics sometimes. And many of of your I believe that in your community, like majority of folks are doing things in a really cool way. um and with that said, I believe that email outreach can be an equalizer. And this is actually like, it might be like philosophical, but this is like super important aspect for me. I do believe that email outreach is an equalizer, meaning like small and medium businesses have the same chance to reach out and to spread out the word about their offering, their awesome products, their awesome services, um, when they don't have that kind of opportunities in different channels. Like PPC is super expensive. You're competing with the big folks, with the big capital, and it's difficult to get SEO. It's difficult to get like positive unit economy in PPC. It's difficult to build, and it's expensive to build like sophisticated marketing funnels to get out to the folks. So the email outreach, I believe, like a democratizer. It's an equalizer, but it has to be done in let's say mindful way, and essentially, even though it's like philosophical, it can get into the like some kind of equation. Like we definitely should strive to maximize on the equation of value divided by resources and risks that we're taking. And by value, I mean both value for us, so monetary, potential revenue, but also the value that we're delivering to the folks that we are reaching out. And this also requires, let's say, minimization of the resources and the risks. And by maximizing the value, what I mean is like having a great offer. That's one thing. Like that's a must. We need to have a really good product, really good service, to be successful. So that we deliver on promise. We need to have like perfect prospecting. So maybe not go super wide unless we've got like a product that is like generally, something that everyone wants to get, and is super happy that we will send them a message to. But it has to be like a really good, other than that, like perfect prospecting is a key nowadays, so that we don't get those spam complaints. We don't get the and problems with the engagement, etc. Then we have to have good timing. So that's why also there's a rise of right now, like solutions showing the signals, who might be on the market, or who might have like a probability they're going to be interested in what we've got to offer. It's interesting also area of the market. And well, we need to rationalize resources so that we like don't overpay for, let's say, hundreds of domains if we don't have it, if we don't need it, because there's another problem we can solve. And we need to optimize the risks. And probably that should be a key of my presentation. And there's one thing, like we can minimize the risks by maximizing the value. That's because the engagement factor of, if our message resonates with the folks that will feel that will get the value, then our deliverability will be actually higher, and our, let's say, inbox placement will be higher. So having something, maximizing the value also minimizes the risks. Another thing is cleaning our lists, and cleaning it from undeliverable email addresses. That's no brainer, right? We want to prevent those bounces that will be there. Also cleaning it from toxic email addresses. By toxic, I mean, for example, privacy litigators that will, like, I don't know, like some folks that are super into GDPR and will say that they're gonna sue us because they don't know how we got their contact information. And there's a higher probability that if you're targeting like big lawyer firms in New York, then there are higher risks. So I've been hearing that on the market, that there might be some litigation. But like toxic also complainers, so that are known for reporting emails as spam, but also spam traps. Like by the way, I believe that spam traps are important part of the ecosystem. Like good spam traps, they do kind of protect us as consumers of email, like meaning from getting phished, being attacked by some frauds, cyber criminals. So that's why, by the way, in Bouncer, we don't exactly point out which email address is a spam trap, because we do know a ton of spam traps, like known spam traps, but also we have the ways of identifying on the fly spam traps of a couple of really big spam trap networks. But we don't expose it. We kind of blend it under the toxic email addresses that we provide, because we need to balance of, we don't want to expose that to the bad actors that potentially might hide and pretend that they are someone else, and actually they are cyber criminals, because that's happening as well. And then also, cleaning it from potentially risky email addresses. So this is like some statistics. This is like maybe not the best statistics. This is one of our lead gen agencies, over a month of their usage, and it seems like they're, let's say, they have a little bit riskier ways of building their lists of leads, but kind of they mitigate that utilizing Bouncer. Yeah, we had some, let's say, conversations with them to identify whether this is the right approach or not, and we have been like stimulating and then giving them some, let's say, feedback on what might be the better practices. And this is actually like a boutique email outreach agency, one of our customer, that is like super aware of deliverability, and they source the data from like really, and you can see the volumes because it's boutique, so they're much smaller volumes, but they know their stuff, and they're like sourcing data from only really good data providers. But still, there's like 7% of potential bounces, and as you mentioned, like 5% is a let's say a safe threshold. So even though they've been getting the data from the good sources that actually validate the data themselves, because of the personal rotation, some lag between the send out and the verification of the data provider, there's still going to be undeliverable email addresses. And as let's say, this anecdote shows, there might be also some spam traps hidden as well, even though you're utilizing. I don't want to scare you, and I want to sell you on like using Bouncer, but there are some risks. So you might ask, okay, I'm saying that, well, first of all, you need to have perfect prospecting, so it kind of limits the outreach, right? And then you need to clean the list additionally and mitigate the risks. So who should I be sending, right? That's going to be much lower volumes, and conversion rates, open rates, response rates, conversion rates differ, industry to industry. So So what to do with that? Well, first of all, you need to find the good balance on the prospecting. Like prospecting is super important. And then when you do that, I think that choosing the provider of email like verification, email list hygiene is essential. And probably choosing the one that has a high coverage. It doesn't have to be us. There are a couple of really good ones on the market. Is also essential. And this is essential because you don't want to have like blind spots. Like this is the stats of this the of this particular boutique agency. Essentially, it seems like they're targeting, for their customers, they're targeting folks that are on the Outlook. Many of them are on Outlook catch-all email addresses. There are a lot of Google, but also Google catch-alls. But also a big portion here is Proofpoint. So anti-spam solution. Mimecast is also a big portion. Then Barracuda is there as well. And the others, well, this particular campaign was a little bit well, didn't have that many that not campaign but customer over the period of 1 month, wasn't having so many like very different providers. But this is super important when to choose a solution that actually will be able to verify those Mimecast proof points and will be able to verify those catch-all Google addresses or catch-all Outlook addresses that have a big portion of the market, because then you you will be also you will be managing the risk. You will have the information. You will be able to make the wise decisions, because then you're gonna see, okay, deliverable is safe to send, right? Deliverable catch-all, this is pretty interesting piece. Well, undeliverable and undeliverable catch-all is like obvious as well. We're not sending to them, but with deliverable catch-all, this is actually an area that your competitors are not sending emails, because usually, in the especially in the call outreach space, folks are recommending don't send to risky or catch-all email addresses because it's too much of a risk, like statistically. So when you do have the access to that kind of leads that no one else is actually targeting because are afraid of, then you are in a position that you're operating in a less crowded space. Those inboxes are not that actually, they're not getting as many emails as the others. So this might be an interesting territory. It's like, you would be a traveling salesman and there's a spot on the map that is blank and you don't know what kind of risks are there. If you do have the access to, like, say, a private map that shows you, it puts you in the space that no other traveling salesman will get there or will be trying to go there. So the key kind of is to balance the risks versus the reach or the potential value that you can get. And like we are trying to operate on that side as well. So we're trying to give you like the data, the information that you can make the informative decision. So for example, we've got this bounce estimate. So when you change the let's say the filters of what you want to what you want to download, which part of the list you want to download, then we're going to show you what's going to be the potential bounce estimate and whether this will be within your, let's say, thresholds or not. And let's say you can also decide on what kind of toxicity range you want to operate, because it might make sense to risk a little bit more and reach to more people, because there's going to be an ROI and the risk is still manageable, and you will not be marked as, let's say, you will not spam bounce, you will not be put on the block list. Of course, as you said, securing your domain is like super important, not using your main domain. This is like no brainer. But maybe not necessarily you need 100 domains, right? And the farm of the I don't know, like Outlook accounts, etc. So, to summarize, and yeah, I know I was talking a lot. I hope valuable stuff. But to summarize, what I would recommend is the perfect prospecting is a key. Like you need to know who's your target audience, who's your ideal customer persona, who will have the higher probability to resonate with your offer and your messaging. Then clean list wisely, not necessarily too aggressively. Like you might want to take some risks, but manageable risks. Yeah, and you need to kind of balance it. Yes, so that's all. I do have time. If you folks that do have on Jeremy, I know I took too much.
No worries. I think it was very interesting. So obviously we're coming at the end of the hour. I'll stick around like 15 more minutes if you have any Q&A. Maybe I'll share or maybe
Yeah,
leave
I'll
the last
stop.
slide, or otherwise the last slide
Yes.
that should be good. Okay, so that's Q&A. We have a few questions. Quick one. Yuval was mentioning Outlook is equal to legacy and on-premise stack. It's basically everything Microsoft. Right, that's it's like we have Gmail is for Google and Outlook is for Microsoft. So everything falls under Outlook. We have Lorenzo who is asking if both the sender and the receiver can be in a blacklist and so cause a bounce. No, it's probably my badly explaining it, but it's basically when you send an email, Google will just look at your own domain or like Outlook, depending who you're sending with. They will look at your own domain and they will decide like, should I send that on the wire to your recipient or should I just like say, no, you can't send? And when they say, no, you can't send, then it will bounce back. That's what we call a sender bounce email. We have Melissa who is who had unfortunately played around with their DNS, had some issues, and now I think is blacklisted, if I got it right. It's a bit of a long text. Yeah, you're still getting in spam. Deliverability is a really big topic. It's more than just validating your list. I would, but basically, if you're blacklisted, that's going to last a month. If you are in a spam, I will avoid sending with this domain for quite some times. And if you can't avoid it, just ask everyone to remove you from the spam. Hopefully, just contact a few people, and hopefully that will give enough signal to Google to just remove you from the spam. But never use outreach with or even like newsletter with your own domain. Yeah, what would you say, Radek? You got something else to add?
Yeah, well, if it comes to like yes, so you need to protect your assets, right? So your main domain that is being used for like your let's say one-on-one conversations should always be like protected. Like some marketing messaging, like newsletter, etc. I would recommend to put on the subdomain. It's still gonna be like inherits the reputation of the main domain, but essentially it will give you the visibility of where do you get some problems, because like in the tool like Google Postmaster, you're going to be able to see that yeah, you had more spam complaints on your transactional emails or than on your marketing emails or vice versa. So that's going to be helpful, and the call to outreach always should be, I believe, made from the separate domain. It has to have like some age, meaning there's essentially like email providers, like email servers, anti-spam filters will be looking at the registration date of the domain and whether there was some kind of traffic coming from that. So because this is an also natural pattern of the frauds or cyber criminals, they are creating cheap domains and
Yeah.
for $1, and they're just burning them and switching. So this kind of pattern of like new domain can bring some signals and can affect you. Also, the warm up of the domain, like I have mixed feelings on the sustainability of automative warm ups, but we'll see how it goes, because there's been like but like I've been hearing that Google was thinking about like identifying actually and correlating that it was
They
the
had 3
automatic.
years to do it. They haven't done it. They let
Yeah.
some of my competitors doing it illegally. But I do think now they actually penalize you without you knowing it.
Hmm.
So that's not a good thing.
Yeah,
Melissa,
I
you're
think
asking.
the natural like organic warm up of the domain, like gradually
Oh, that
increasing the
works. That works for
it
sure.
works. And
Like
at
some people
first,
actually contacting
yeah,
retail
yeah.
businesses, asking them if they're open next Monday at lunch, and obviously people will
That's
reply.
that's
Melissa,
interesting.
yeah. Melissa, you're mentioning how many people should need to remove you from spam. I will keep on doing it until people tell you they received your email. That's your main domain. That's your main asset. You have to do it. And just to answer quickly, Greg as well, fearing about his marketing newsletter with double opt-in and subscriber in it, I will still not use the domain. So for QuickMail, we're using marketing.quickmail.com as the email. So it's going to be like support at marketing.quickmail.com, because then it will have its own sort of like deliverability, but you should never use your main domain for that. Question for you, Radek. How often should you clean your list?
It depends. I know it's
All right, next question. Can you do it in like 30 seconds max?
Yeah, so if operating in B2B space with a big personal rotation, I would say like every 3-6 months. If you're targeting consumers or like single operators, because probably so free accounts, but like businesses, probably like twice a year, once a year should be enough.
Yeah,
Because
I'll
those
say the
emails
same
don't
thing.
fluctuate as much.
Yep, I'll say the same thing. Daniel would like you to clarify on their approach to exclusion based on toxicity score. Should we automatically exclude all outreach email that fall under any toxicity level, or are there specific thresholds that you should apply? So tell us a little bit about your toxicity
Yeah, in a
inbound sale.
nutshell.
Yeah.
So like 4 and 5s are super toxic. You don't want to send emails to them unless you had some, like, you build the list organically, you had some engagement with those email addresses, then, and you know that there's a human being with a relationship to you, so you don't want to send to them. 3s are usually like lower quality email addresses, potential spam traps, but like with some lower probability of being spam traps, plus complainers, so people who report email as spam. Usually you don't want to send to them. 1 and 2s are the email addresses that are like widely circulating or breached email addresses. So like meaning email addresses that were subject to data breach. So those folks get a lot of emails. So those inboxes are crowded. So they may be a little bit more, let's say, frustrated when they don't like an email, and they may report email as spam. But usually I would keep them. If you've got something awesome to offer, I would say 0 to 2, where 0 is non-toxic, up to 2s should be safe. With 3s, I would rather be on the safe side here, and 4 and 5s, this is no brainer. You don't want to send to them.
Yeah, it's almost like a Boolean, right?
Yeah.